Greetings, and welcome all to Digital Undivided's Diane Dinners. Diane Dinners is named after Digital Undivided's Project Diane report, the first ever research study to quantify the entrepreneurial experience of women of color founded startups in the United States. Since the inaugural release of the Project Diane report, Digital Undivided has documented the experiences of the founders on their startup journey, sparked a national dialogue about inclusive innovation, and even brought partners in the startup ecosystem together to discuss issues and co-create solutions. Diane Dinners allows us to have a broader reach for viewers at home as we bring together industry leaders to drive conversation about the challenges our Latina and Black women founders face within the ecosystem. Our goal is to elevate these issues to promote understanding and focus our collective efforts on scalable solutions. Now, you'll hear from some captivating and inspiring industry leaders and entrepreneurs who are innovating new industries, including Shannon Morales, founder of Trabaja, a talent marketplace and community for undersupported tech talent. Charlotte Newman, global head of underrepresented founders at Amazon Web Services. Erica Dijkman, general partner at Rain Ventures, a seed-stage consumer technology and software startups firm. Natasha Benskapal, co-founder and chief operating officer at Vega X Holding, an index-driven crypto asset management platform. During tonight's conversation, we will address the intersecting constraints experienced by women of color in the investment and startup space, the initiatives and programs designed to address the lack of diversity in tech, valuations, and more. So let's get into it.
Episode 3.
Okay, so Charlotte, Natasha, different perspectives, but similar concern. I'd love for us to talk about mental health and its role for the founders. What insights do you have for entrepreneurs watching this? Are there any systems of support that you've used, and what systems of support are you providing?
I think taking care of yourself is a really important thing that needs to happen, period, as an entrepreneur. I think that you get very much bogged down by the hustle and bustle of the day, where you open your eyes and you start thinking about things and you start doing things, and then you have to close your eyes again and then you realize, where did the day go? And I think part of what I've been trying to do more is literally schedule in time for myself. And it sounds ridiculous, but I live by my calendar, so I realize if it's not on my calendar, I won't do it. But I need to do more personal things, like whether that be meditation or working out more or taking a walk or just putting my phone down and closing the computer. I actually have to build those things into my calendar. So that's how I deal with it. I actually physically put time slots to do certain things so that I can make sure I safeguard my time. Because what I've realized is if I start picking up the phone to talk to investors, or we're dealing with clients, or we're doing a new project, I will just get consumed in that, and that will be it. And then I'll look up at the end of the day and wonder, like, where did the day go? What went wrong? And it was literally that things just got taken away from me. So I think the more that you actually schedule things and get into this habit of taking the time for yourself, I think the more healthy you will be as an entrepreneur and as a person. Because again, I think your time can just get sucked up so much by business that you forget about the personal. And I don't think that there is necessarily this world of like 50-50 balance, but I think we should be aiming to try to get there. And I think the more things that you can do to take steps towards it, even if it's little steps, will be beneficial for you in the long term. So that's kind of that's how I deal with it.
You are not alone in the calendar. It's bad there. And, I had a mentor share once that you can have it all, just not all at the same time.
Right.
So just choose what you want to have at the time you want to have it.
I believe that.
Charlotte, what's your take?
Yeah, I relate a lot to a lot of what Natasha mentioned about how she personally manages ensuring that she takes care of herself. But as I think about the founders that I work with through the program that I lead, I often kind of start with like my understanding of what it's like to be a founder. We talked about how isolating it can be, the ups and downs of the founder journey. And one of the things that I think really helps to kind of keep founders connected is being intentional about building community. We have something called Reach that connects founders both for in-person events and also online through Slack. I think it's really important for founders to be almost in a constant conversation with peers who are experiencing some of the same things. So you can bounce ideas off of one another, but also share when the journey gets tough. And then, one of the things that I'm definitely being thoughtful about as well is more intentional resources that are really dedicated to mental health. That's something that founders have told us that they really care about. And we're definitely being responsive to that. Yeah.
I love to hear that.
Yeah.
Shannon, you've gone through the ups and downs, and you're persevering and you're here through it all. What are some of the leadership lessons that you've learned in the space, and what does leadership look like to you?
Absolutely. I think we've all had moments where we've had or been in toxic work environments or left a job because of a bad manager. I always knew that if and when I was a leader, I would, make mental note to not be that leader that I left in
Right.
corporate America. Those things to me were being transparent.
Mhm.
So if there are things that might seem rocky or we are pivoting a lot, I'm always transparent with my team about why we're making these pivots, why we're making these transitions. Another one is just allowing your team to also be challenged and to grow within your company and your organization. Most folks think that, because you're a startup, you always, the only thing you have to offer is money, but you have a lot more to offer because you're flexible. And so with my team, I'm always like, well, what do you want to do? What are some things that you want to try out within Trabaja? Because we're allowed to do that. Whereas if you're in a larger corporate environment, you may not necessarily have that flexibility. And so it's just understanding who your teammates are and then being able to constantly see them grow within the company. And when it's time for them to go, being able to, make those introductions to other founders that might be further along to give them, opportunities that they might need.
Love that. Charlotte?
Yeah, absolutely. I've learned so much on the journey of building what I have at Amazon Web Services to serve founders and investors. One of the things that I think a lot about is the power of influence. It's Amazon Web Services is a large multinational, tech company, and often when I'm trying to sell an idea, it's selling it to executives internally first, right? And being able to do so and cut through all of the different considerations that they'll have, like on a day-to-day basis. And I think oftentimes founders have to think about this too. Like, how do you really walk into a room and sell someone on your idea? How do you kind of influence the conversation? I've learned a lot about one, I think using your conviction often. Like, if you're really personally convicted about what you're building, or really personally convicted, whether that's internally as an entrepreneur, if you're at a big corporate, or if you're building a kind of startup, I think it's really important to kind of pull that from within. Like, just and that connects to something else that I have learned a lot about, which is being undeniable. I think when you are pulling from a source of feeling a great deal of conviction around what it is that you're building, you can tap into something that really, it's almost like you can, if that person says no, you'll eventually get a yes, right? That's what I mean by a kind of undeniability, just getting to a place where you are in a certain kind of space where you're just kind of like, I will find that yes. I will make sure that I have the resources I need to build this thing because it's so important. I'm so committed to the fact that it needs to be in the marketplace. I'm going to do it. And that's how I feel about the work that I'm leading.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Erica, you're evaluating founders every day. And we all know that to be a leader, right, one needs to be influential. But how do you gauge the difference between being an influencer and being a leader?
Right. Well, there is a big difference, and we invest in leaders, not in influencers. We actually had a CEO of a company that I shall not name that had to be replaced because it turned out she was an influencer and not a leader. And that's actually kind of the opposite of what we want to see. We feel like a leader is somebody who has a vision, right? And can communicate that vision and rally other people to get excited about and execute that vision. I have 2 kids graduating from college this week. So this weekend at the graduation, we were talking a lot about what are some of the leadership qualities in some of the amazing leaders that, their father and I have worked for. And, the number one thing for me that came up, I worked when Jamie Dimon was the head of investment banking at Solomon Smith Barney. I worked for the former CEO of Sales and Trading, the founder of Golden Seed, Stephanie Hanbury Brown. And, 2 of the things that they really exemplified to me were people who were so passionate about what they were building and were able to get all of the employees at this organization really passionate about solving a problem. And then most importantly, they were there before everyone else started work and, there after almost everyone else went home, maybe not the analysts, but, really showing that commitment to actually get in there, roll up their sleeves and do the work. And we, especially at the early stage, look for founders who can do that. But I would say that there's also one other thing that is the trickiest thing to find, and it differentiates the founder who can do a startup and maybe not get very far versus the founder who can do a startup and get to sort of a $1 billion company status, is that not only do you have to be willing to be the jack of all trades, but you have to learn how to delegate when the time comes.
Yes.
And I think that especially as women, we tend to maybe micromanage a little bit, guilty, maybe have less confidence that other people are going to execute things as well as we could. But that is a critical skill in building an organization and truly being a leader, is learning how to trust others, teach others, and inspire others to do just as well as you could.
I love that. I love that. And I'm sure from the founder perspective, once you were able to delegate, what opened up for you?
A lot. Time, space,
Your
heart,
calendar.
your calendar, your heart. Because half of the battle is recognizing that you need to delegate.
Right.
The second is like actually doing it, right? Because I think it probably happened to many of us where we're like, we need to delegate. And then it took some time before we were like, all right, like it's time to actually delegate, right? Like, you know, you need to do it, but letting go tends to be difficult. And I think that's where the micromanaging nature comes in, because it's your baby. You want to make sure that everything is buttoned up. But the reality is, as you continue to grow and scale and build your company, you cannot own everything and do it to the best of your ability and excel on all of those things. So what you need to identify are people that you can feel confident about them being able to deliver and make those decisions. And it's not easy. I think, it's hard to give up the reins, but I think that's part of why people are so important, because the people that you hire, you need to be able to feel confident that you can leave them with something and that they can take it and go with it, and that you can feel confident on what that will look like when they take it and go with it. And I think that it's just a world where you have to practice that. Unfortunately, it's not going to be a world where when you hand it over, it's going to be done exactly like you would do it, right? But that's okay. And I think that that's part of what being a leader also encompasses, figuring out what's okay and what the parameters are for, it may not be perfect, but as long as it looks like this, we're still in good shape, right? And I think that that's half of the battle, is kind of choosing your battles is probably really what it is. Figuring out, like, is this a thing I should really be a stickler about? Or is it okay that it's not 100%? 90s okay, 80s okay, right? But there are certain things where will need to be sticklers on, and that might be something you keep owning, or you're very prescriptive about what that looks like. But I think it's about being able to release the reins a bit and reimagine what, the goal looks like if it's somebody else that's taking ownership of it. And it might look slightly different than the path that you'd take to get there. But the reality is, if it gets to the goal, I think net, you're still okay with the way in which it happened.
Okay. Yeah. Shannon, anything to add to that?
I know I said this before, but I agree with you.
Well, Shannon, let's start you with a question first and see if Natasha agrees. How are you defining success for yourself at this time?
Yes, that's such a loaded question. So for me, success looks like being able to have freedom over my time. When in corporate America, I was very often splitting myself between work and also trying to balance growing a family. I didn't get home till 7 o'clock at night most days, and I hired someone to literally take care of my kids and feed my kids and all those things. Success to me was being able to have financial freedom and being able to have control over my time, to be able to come home, be with my kids. I see my kids at 3 o'clock when they come home from school. I pick my kids up, and I just have freedom. And I think freedom and flexibility is what success looks like for me. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
I love that. All right, Natasha, do you agree?
Yes, 150% agree. I think that there is a lot of success and freedom that is allowed with ownership. And I say that to say it's complicated, because as you have more ownership over things, your responsibility increases, but the ability to dictate what it is you spend your time on, I think, is a measure of success. Because again, one of the most limited resources we ever have is time. And the way in which we manage that is extremely important. So I think that when you're able to have flexibility built in and ownership built in, that in itself allows you to be, operate on your own terms. And I think that in itself allows you the flexibility that you don't necessarily have in traditional corporate America jobs. With that being said, the give and take is that, when you do have that flexibility, you're probably up later doing the work, right? But the difference is that's your choice, right? You're not, you're able to kind of play this game of balance on your own terms versus it being dictated to you as to, the hours in which you can live your life are 6 to 9 p.m., right? I think is a very different freedom when you can dictate those hours yourself and move your schedule around to be able to service that.
Okay, well, we've gotten some great answers from this side of the table. Now I'm going to move it over here. Is there a way that you are defining or redefining success as it pertains to the entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Success for what I am building at AWS is defined by the founders that we work with, right? It's, am I reaching more founders at scale? Are more underrepresented founders, Black women, Latino women, the full range of underrepresented founders, are they able to build their ideas and scale them in greater numbers than they would have been without the programs that we're launching? That's success for me. It really is defined by whether or not founders are ultimately successful in scaling their startups and raising money.
Will we share that?
And I'd love to address this from maybe a different angle, not so much the personal side, but what has been considered success as a founder or an entrepreneur. And, Monique and I have always said it's not successfully raising money. And I feel terrible because so many people, for example, founders will pitch me and they'll say, oh, well, we're doing X, Y, Z. And I'm like, well, does that business model make sense or work? And they're like, well, so-and-so is doing the same thing and they raised $50 million. And I'm like, yeah, but have they actually made money? That's what we're here to do. So I think that, it's going to become more and more apparent that businesses are here to create economic value, right? To create value, not to just burn through capital. So this idea that we had in the past, which is that you would have the tech crunches and, the Forbes and Fortunes glamorizing people for raising money rather than for making money, right? And we look at a great example of a company that's done that so well, Calendly, right? I think they had only raised about $500,000 total and ended up, getting to a $3 billion valuation. So that's what I'd much rather see. And I'd much rather see folks not get so caught up in, oh, XYZ person raised so much money, they must be doing it better. They're probably not. And in 9 times out of 10, they're failing. That's the venture model. So success for you should be building a firm that's going to create value for you, that's going to create value for your family, create value for your employees, and also hopefully create value for any investors that you might bring along for the ride.
Love that point. And what a fantastic way for us to leave off. And that concludes this Diane Dinners series. Thank you to all of our guests for their time and insights this evening. I know many current and budding entrepreneurs, investors, and organizations are going to benefit from your experience, wisdom, and passion for this cause. We also want to thank our sponsors for this event and our Digital Undivided partners for helping us co-create scalable solutions supporting the growth and success of Latina and Black women entrepreneurs in the startup space.
For more information on Project Diane, visit digitalundivided.com/Project Diane.